you might have gotten this paper in your email sometime during the last couple of weeks. This, what I'm going to talk about is a new paper that's out just a couple of months ago. It's a follow-up study from the Howard 2005 study. Now this here is just to remind you, in case you have forgotten, this is the original. This here is the original paper, published by Howard, Spark, and Cohen Green, Stanislav, back in 2005, and it compared three treatment approaches. One was the EIBI, or IBT, I think they call it, and eclectic, and then more of a generic kind of programming. And the eclectic, or the EIBI had between 25 and 40 hours per week, the eclectic about 30, and the generic about 15 hours a week. And there were 61 children in total, with the EIB group being about 29 children and 16 in each of these groups. Conclusion of this was that after 14 months, or a little over a year, the EIBI group outperformed the other two groups on almost all variables. Cognitive, nonverbal, receptive, expressive communication, self-help, and so on. These are from Weinberg. The only thing that was not statistically significant was the motor skills on the Weinberg. So, as you can see here, they have either 1 or 2 stars on all of these, which means that the differences were significant. So that goes for standard scores, age equivalent scores, and also they have a measure of learning rate. So this was a 2005 study. Now they have published a follow-up which talks about the test results after 2 years and after 3 years. And just to go through the conclusions first, it is that the results from the first year were sustained, and that children in the EIBI group were twice as likely to score within the normal range following intervention. Also, that significantly more children in the EIBI group increased their score with at least 1 standard deviation, which is 15 points on the standard scores. And furthermore, they found that most of the gains were seen during the first year of intervention, but there were some improvements also in year 2 and 3, I should say there. For the other 2 groups, this proportion of children within the normal range and the proportion of children that made at least 1 standard deviation gain decreased somewhat. Just to remind you also what the other 2 groups, a bit more detail on that. So we have the IBT, the EIBI group, but the other 2 groups are called eclectic approaches. And we have 2 groups. Underneath this, we have the autism programming, which is a mixture of teach, PECs, even some ABA, sensory integration, and the staffing ratio was typically 1:1 or 1:2, or one child, 2 children and 1 adult, 2:1. Would you say 1:2 instead of 2:1 maybe? But anyway, and it was about 30 hours a week. And both of these groups had some children attending part-time in ordinary classrooms. The generic programming is more typical special education, done in groups or in classroom. Child to staff ratio or staff to child ratio rather is one staff per 6 children. The groups were described as being developmentally, or the intervention was described as being developmentally appropriate and language rich. Most, or I think it was about 1/3 of the children also had pull-out speech therapy sessions for one to two times a week, and the intensity here is a little bit less than the other two groups, 15 to 17 hours a week. So I think, at least from what I know, that these are, at least this one here, the generic programming is quite typical, isn't it, from what you know? But if you're not in an EIBI program, would this be typical, or would this be typical, do you think, for what?
I think both of them here in California are typical options that families are given in IEP teams try to decide on. What we see is more of the non-vocal children will be placed in the autism programming.
Okay, alright.
And they're there full day, 5 days a week, whereas the generic programming is typically an option that some parents will choose if their child has a little bit more speech to start with and wants their child around other children that have speech.
Okay, that's so it is a realistic comparison, meaning that this is something that you typically would find and be offered.
Yeah, here in California.
And
Yeah,
this
Christine,
study was
questions?
conducted in California, so
Yeah.
it definitely
Yeah.
reflects.
So it's not particularly bad or particularly good, any one of these, from what is typically offered.
Well,
No?
there's a lot of variation from schools.
I was just thinking the autism programming that I think a lot of times it's sold as an they actually call it an ABA classroom, and it's not. It's eclectic is the perfect word for it, because Amanda and I just went to a IEP this week where it was an ABA classroom, and they were very set on it was ABA, and they have BCBAs running it, and this is what it is. And then they're starting to talk about all these sensory integration strategies and all of these different things, and a lot of the districts are kind of using that as an excuse not to fund EIBI because we can offer it ourselves, but it's really an eclectic program.
I think the thing that's important too is in California, it's not required for special education teachers to take any sort of ABA coursework. So a lot of them have never heard of this stuff before. I know when I'm teaching and I'm coming into second year students who already work in classrooms as aides or whatever, and I say, okay, who here knows what ABA stands for? And they can't even tell me. They have no idea what that means or anything. So it's pretty jarring sometimes to know that this is what we do is, empirically validated, sound, we know it works, especially with our kids, and none of the teachers are doing it. Or even, not even that they're not doing it because they're choosing not to, but they're not even educated in it to know that it's an option.
Yeah, as you will see later on in the study, and also for the first study that they published on the 1 year data, there were no significant differences between the AP group and the GP group. So for many of the analysis that I will show you later, they are just collapsed since they were more or less identical. So this is a nice graph. Takes a while to understand it, but I will try to explain to you. So what you have here, this is first year here, and this is just to show movement. As you see here, the IBT group is not not represented here because all the children that had IBT, they had that at year 1, year 2 and year 3, so there were no movement in that group. But for the AP group, the autism program group, after the second year here, 3 of the children got some unknown provision. 13 remain in the IP group. At the third year, only 7 remained. 5 of the children in the AP group were moved to the GP group. 1 more was lost to the unknown group, so you ended up with 4 here. Does it make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. Arrows.